It can be hard to know what to do or say when your child or teenager becomes aware of a tragic world event. Kids are often bombarded by the events of the day through TV, print and social media, and hearing things from their peers. This can make the world seem like a scarier place than it actually is. Kids and teenagers don't have the experience of years to place things in perspective, so when tragedy strikes, they can generalise, worry that a tragic event might likely happen to them. So here's 3 suggestions to support your kids when bad things happen in the world. Number 1. Turn off the news. When tragedy strikes, as important as it is for humans to know what's happening in our world so we can respond or affect change, the tragedy is often turned into a headline designed to elicit enough fear and curiosity for us to watch. And repeated viewings can leave kids feeling these things are happening all the time. I call the morning and evening news programs the stab and punch news because it seems like that's all they report on. Watching this kind of news service can make it seem like stabbings are happening outside our door. They rarely broadcast all the wonderful human events that are happening in the world all the time. My personal suggestion is that kids under 12 don't need to see the news. It can be overwhelming and leave them with a scary perspective of the world. For kids over 12, I'm not sure they need to see the news either. If they're interested, I think it's important to watch the news with them so you can gauge their reaction and decide whether something requires some discussion and support. Number 2, ask. If you think it's likely that your child or adolescent has heard about the tragedy or you know that they have, you might start by asking something like, "Did you hear about that thing in the news?" Notice I'm being deliberately vague because if my child hasn't heard about the tragedy, then I don't want to tell them something that might cause unnecessary worry. Call me naive, but I think we find out about the world quick enough without denting our kids with the awful happenings. If your child says, "Yeah, I've heard about it," you can ask them what they've heard and how they feel about it. Your job here is to listen. Don't worry too much if they've got the facts incorrect. Of course, if they've heard an exaggerated version of the tragedy, it's important to let them know enough facts to reduce their worry. You might say something like, "Yeah, there are a lot of people hurt and it's all pretty awful, but I think it might have been a little bit less than that." Number 3, reassure. It's normal to wonder when we hear about a tragedy whether it will happen to us. If you're a kid or teenager exposed to repeated stories about the tragic event, you'll wonder about whether "it might happen to me" can quickly turn into "it will happen to me." It's important to acknowledge this fear and try not to convince them out of it. That sometimes bad things happen, but reassure your child or teenager that these kinds of things are rare events and that mostly they're quite safe. We hope this video has been helpful in supporting your family to deal with tragedy in the news. Of course, if tragic events have caused a significant disturbance for your kids, we're here to help. Bye for now.